Christine Lowe of the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. For this panel, we have three panelists who are in different aspects of economic activities in Hong Kong. Generally, when we talk about climate change, we tend to focus on decarbonization, especially when it comes to the energy and electricity sector, as well as transport. But we thought today that we'll take a slightly different tack of a number of different sectors that perhaps people focus less on, but nevertheless, they are very important to Hong Kong. Now, on my left, we have Thomas Ho. He's one of the most experienced engineers in Hong Kong and the head of Arup. We have Ronnie Tong, who's with Hong Kong RITA. I won't go into the details of what it is. If you haven't heard of Hong Kong RITA, well, you will find out very soon. And I have Andrew Young, who is the head of innovation in Sino, which is, of course, a well-known property company. But he's not going to talk about property to us today. And I'll leave it as a little surprise what he's going to talk to us about. Now, in terms of climate change, I think we all agree from panel one that we have a date with destiny. And as I think it was explained earlier on, there are over 100 countries around the world that have made some kind of pledge to achieving net zero sometime between 2050 and 2060. So this is a rare occurrence in the world, I think we can say, that so many countries around the world, and they're going to gather in Scotland in November to recommit to perhaps even tougher targets. So the world, all of us, have a date with destiny, but we need to get there. And I think we also heard the first panel kind of admit to ourselves, this is really a revolution. This is going to be hard, in fact, very, very hard. And we haven't done it before, so we need to collaborate. So collaborate is a very, very important and major theme for all of us, wherever we are in the world. And then, of course, there's the issue of the money. We want to make sure that money is directed into much more sustainable, low carbon and zero carbon activities. So let me come to you first, Thomas.
Yes.
You have been involved in so many types of construction in Hong Kong over so many decades. I mean, Hong Kong is still building things, right?
Yeah.
And in terms of the net zero challenge, in your estimation, just in the next 10 years or so, how much more construction is Hong Kong going to do?
So, Christine, I think it will be a lot, I think, to be absolutely honest. People are saying to me, Thomas, I think you're really lucky. It seems that another golden era had come into construction. But to be absolutely honest, I think we are. In the next 10 years, because of the housing need, we're going to build another 430,000 units. That's why Andrew is so happy now. And then I think because of the aging demographic, Paul, I think our financial secretary, had earmarked another 500 billion of really what we're going to do, I think, the healthcare and hospital. You can see the 140 billion airport, the third runway is continuing. MTRC 4-5 lines are coming into play in 2-3 years' time. So I think it's really a golden opportunity to really awake, I think, our sort of developers or project initiators on this most important sort of topic on net zero approach. That's really the golden opportunity. Otherwise, the next 10 years, another sort of 3 trillion of value would be sort of completed. Then there's no chance on really achieving this 2050 sort of goal, I think, as a whole.
Right. So what you're really saying is Hong Kong is going to spend actually so much money on building housing for people, as well as all kinds of major infrastructure, like hospitals and so on. We'll come back to you later on, and you're going to tell us how to do it, right? What you're going to say is we got to do net zero from the start, but that's really hard. But you're going to tell us how to do it. Now, well, Ronnie, as I said earlier on, Ronnie is with Hong Kong RITA, and actually Hong Kong RITA is one of the world's most innovative research and development organization on the textile and garments industry. And since we're all going to be wearing clothes and having to produce textile for all sorts of reasons for the rest of our lives, I mean, tell us a little bit about why Hong Kong is important, because so many people no longer think of Hong Kong as a manufacturing a city, but actually we are in the middle of supply chains. But tell us about why Hong Kong is important.
Yeah, fashion industry in general is one of the major contributor to the greenhouse gas emission and the carbon emission. And that's because we have a really long supply chain. And from material, we have agriculture when you have to plant cotton, or you have the petroleum-based material like polyester. And then you have the manufacturing process making the fabric and the clothes. And then you have packaging and logistic and then retail. So it's a really long supply chain from brands to manufacturer to customer. And Hong Kong is actually has been the sourcing hub for the industry for decades. We start with manufacturing, and we still have quite a lot of leading manufacturers in Hong Kong in the industry that's based in Hong Kong or originated in Hong Kong. So we sort of have the first-hand experience, and we have the visibility to the upper end of the supply chain in the industry, where 70% of the carbon emission comes from. So in Hong Kong, actually, it's in a very strategic position in pushing the net zero agenda in the fashion industry.
Well, what you're saying is actually Hong Kong companies, right, that have been based in Hong Kong a really long time, actually can be extremely influential in the industry to achieve net zero. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. Because when you look at the numbers, along the value chain in fashion, 70% of the greenhouse gas emission comes from the upper end, where the materials, production, and manufacturing comes from. So we are actually in control of that upper end of the whole value chain.
Right. Well, that's good to know. And we won't forget how influential Hong Kong is. But we will talk a little bit later on about how you think Hong Kong can exert that influence. Andrew, maybe we can come to you. I think we know you very well in terms of your company and its property management and development business.
Mhm.
But you're spending a lot of time, and you're the director of innovation. You're spending a lot of time on food waste. Can you tell us about that?
Okay. Now, as a group, we are very focused on sustainability and innovation as one of the major pillars. And but for the food wise, we believe that's part of our sustainability journey. And for me, my team really look at innovation and technology as a means of achieving our targets. Coming from outside the property sector, so although I'm an engineer, I have not been in building construction for a long time, and so I'm not as experienced as Thomas in talking about that. So our company is happy because we keep building apartments and assets for Hong Kong people to live in. But we also believe in sustainability and innovation as pillars that enable us to achieve certain targets. And certainly sustainability in terms of decarbonizing and carbon zero and all these initiatives. We believe the future is we need to embrace innovation and technology to achieve those targets. Food waste is certainly one of those things that we deal with because we have a residential apartment that we are leasing out, and we have shopping centers, hotels who generate a lot of food waste. And I think that's one area that we as a group has been taking quite a bit of initiative in dealing with it.
We certainly want to go a little into that later on because food waste is one of those things that, well, we're lucky in Hong Kong. We eat several times a day and we eat out a lot. So it is something that I think we can control to a great extent about food waste. So that's something that all of us can contribute to. So we'll come back to you on this. But Thomas, let's come back to you, right? These trillions of dollars of things that you're going to build, right? What are you going to do to make sure we start off with net zero?
So I think this is really a very difficult sort of question. That's why I'm really looking forward for Minister Wong's sort of action plan, I think, in November. But maybe let's have the first slide, I think. So I think other than waiting for, I think, Minister Wong, I think everyone, I think, should have your own sort of zero emission sort of strategy. I think for construction, I think for a humble contractor like me, I think what we're setting ourselves, I think, an ambition that every construction site should be approaching this zero emission sort of
You're saying
vision.
we can do this now. We can do
We
this.
definitely
Yes?
can do it now. I think, or maybe we should now beginning to focus into the agenda and to really explore whether the construction site can be reaching the construction emission zero. But then you look at the bullet points. I think it's definitely doable. Like the battery energy storage system is now in Hong Kong. You have already done 40 energy container already. And this mobile electric plant, I think technology is evolving. I think that is going to come. So I think you need to begin to focus into that area. But then again, I would really love, another Minister Wong, from the UN Bureau, to come back with the sector action plan rather than the global Hong Kong, zero emission plan. Because that is absolutely needed.
Can you just explain the difference between the sector plan
Yes,
and the building plan?
yes, I think we are really trying to sort of look into or learn from the UK sort of strategy. Every sector, they have their own sort of sector sort of plan. And together, they have this collaborative, integrated country plan. So in Hong Kong, Minister Wong would have the Hong Kong sort of plan. But then on the sort of construction, building, civil foundation, everything should be together to formulate this construction sector better plan.
So I think, Thomas, what you're saying is, and we talked in panel one about this, that the Hong Kong government is right now preparing the next climate plan, which we expect to come out sometime in the late summer or early autumn. So you would like to have these things all to be mentioned in it.
Yeah, correct. I think, but sector by sector, not just one sector, but all the sector need to be together. Otherwise, you are not tackling it holistically. That is really most important. As you rightly point out, collaboration is the key.
Okay, well, please carry on.
Yeah, okay, sorry. The next plan, the next thing that I think the construction industry are really doing, the UN Bureau as well as the Construction Industry Council have been pushing a lot onto this integrated modular construction. And then you can see within 4 months, I think the 800 beds on this negative work have been completed. So a lot of those sort of work will now be DFMA, design and manufacture into the factory, and then just logistically bring to site, and then just like playing Lego. By doing so, some in one of the quarantine center that we are doing, some 95% of the materials and work will be done in the factory. And you can just imagine the emission, the safety, the quality is so much better. That's why in jurisdiction like Singapore and UK, they are really now specifying, also China as well, specifying how many of DFMA percentage will be done in your infrastructure or in your development. Say, for example, in Shanghai, they will now specify something like 35% would need to be done. And I'm just, requesting the government, let's do it, in a holistic manner. Come back with maybe 25% in 2025, or 35% in 2030. Those are the sort of roadmap that we should be drawing, ourselves. And we have proven the good examples by using BIM, collaboration method. That is really the right way to go.
But presumably some of the things that you're constructing in a factory, right, and then bringing it to the site.
Correct.
But presumably a lot of those factories are in the Greater Bay Area. Is that right?
Correct. The whole fabrication, the land cost in Hong Kong is so expensive. That's why the fabrication hub would be in the Greater Bay Area. But I'm suggesting to our government, please, in Hong Kong, create a fabrication hub ourselves, because that is really very much needed. Technology needs to remain in Hong Kong. Again, because
so
of
the
the
construction,
logistic cost.
the building could be in the GBA, but you're saying the design element, is it
the whole sort of fabrication hub, the industry sort of 4.0 industry
I see.
fabrication should be in Hong Kong, while the majority should be in the Greater Bay Area.
Right.
Because the technology need to be here.
Yes.
And again, because the logistic cost is very expensive, getting more and more expensive. So that's why, again, we emit a lot of carbon dioxide. So it would be helpful if the fabrication hub is in Hong Kong and facilitating the whole thing. That would be the idea. So this is the second initiative that the industry should do. The third, I think, bullet point would be people, we are now in this sort of digital sort of era. And I think in the meantime, we are not really reaching the innovation are not reaching to the last 100 meters, to the front line, and the whole industry, no matter it's Hong Kong, Singapore, they are all already trying to address this. So this is another action that we need to do, because unless the technology can be used by the front line, you are not helping anything. So you can only have, I think, incremental improvement, but then you can really move up to the site agent, the site foreman, by using the technology, then you can have the multiple benefit. The fourth thing, I think, after we have done this, is really the whole life cycle sort of asset management need to be done. So this would be the 4 points. I think we are trying to move on to net zero. You need to address this one by one and sector by sector.
Okay, well, we probably want to come back to these issues a little later, and and the audience, please feel free to start sending in your questions so that we can put them to the panelists. About life cycle analysis, and I think Ronnie, you and I have talked about your industry. How you can do that. Maybe you can do something similar to what Thomas has done, which is, what are you doing? How's your industry and what is Hong Kong Rita doing to get us up to speed on net zero?
Yeah, we try to keep ourselves busy every day. And well, Hong Kong Rita, we are focusing on innovation and development on textile and apparel industry. And from 2016, we actually have an initiative around circularity, like how to make fashion or textile apparel fully circular, make it a circular economy. And we put in a lot of time developing a few major projects. One is in Hong Kong. We work with a major manufacturer, Novotex, and we built an upcycling factory for textile in Hong Kong. And it's like the first factory that has been a long time. There's no factory in Hong Kong. It's just, we are bringing back the manufacturing in Hong Kong. And it's a highly automated upcycling system. And the second one is the garment-to-garment recycling system, which is a new retail concept that customer can bring in their old garment, and then we, in a 40-foot container, and we just recycle it into a new garment. So that's a retail concept. And
where is the factory you were talking about?
Yeah.
Where is the factory
it's
in Hong
in
Kong?
in Tai Po, the industry, the industrial state. And we put in a lot of new technology in that factory. We have the auto color sorting, and the whole process is highly automated. And I think the capacity is around like 3 tons per day. And it's a successful business case. And I know Novotex is operating the factory, and they are getting a lot of inquiry from the industry, and not just fashion industry, and all sorts of textile recycling, like hotels, and like all industry that's involved in textile recycling. And
what you're saying is, people who have old garments or textile, they could take it to the factory.
Well, it's a little more complicated than that.
Sorry about that, because actually I think there's a lot of interest in Hong Kong about what to do.
Yeah. Well, actually, on the factory level, the operation is more complicated because, textile it consists of a lot of components. Like a piece of clothes, you have like different blends of fiber. And that actually brings in the technology that we also develop. The blended fiber has long been a pain point for textile recycling. Because when you look at the clothes, or when you look at the care label of the clothes, it's rarely only single fiber. So if we are recycling post-consumer apparels, that's gonna be a problem because you cannot control the output of the recycled material. So we actually, in the last 5 years, we developed 3 different fiber separation technology. Separating cotton with polyester, which is one of the most common blends in the industry. And also we have another technology separating protein fiber, like wool and cashmere with cotton and man-made fiber, like synthetic fiber. So that's actually a more like industrial scale, or it's more addressing the problem that the industry face in recycling, like how to make the whole industry circular. And it's really interesting because we just rolled out our industrial scale up of one of the separation technology, what we call the hydrothermal separation technology that separate cotton and polyester. And we are doing a trial in a partner in Indonesia. And it's a very special collaboration because we bring in a brand and we bring in a manufacturer. And this is exactly what I was saying in the first session, that Hong Kong can serve as a connector in the industry. We can bring in different parties because we understand what they are coming from, what their problems are, and we can help bring in the innovation and make something really happen.
In Thomas's case, you're building things right here in Hong Kong. In your case, you have a global industry, but the Hong Kong players can have a tremendous impact all along the supply chain.
Yes.
Well, and didn't Hong Kong Rita win some acknowledgement or global prizes? Maybe you want to tell us a little about that so we can, share in being proud of Hong Kong.
Yeah, we actually we participate in the Geneva Innovation Award every year, and fortunately we got a few awards. Like this year, some of our project actually got silver and gold award from the Geneva Innovation Award, and one of them it's actually a side development from the technology I just talked about, like the hydrothermal separation technology. Because the hydrothermal separation technology, we separate the cotton with the polyester. The polyester can be made into fabric, like textile, right away. And the cotton actually turn into what we call the cellulosic powder. So it's in powder form. So our team just, think about like how can we use this powder? Like it cannot just, we cannot just throw it back in the process and make it into textile. So we find different ways to utilize the powder. One of them it's to make it into a PFC-free durable water repellent finish on the fabric. So because water repellent is one of the key functions in a lot of apparel items. And PFC-free is always, on the map that people are looking for solution for achieving this function without PFC. And by using this recycled cellulose powder, we actually changed we changed the nature of the powder, and we make it water repellent, and then we just coat it on the fabric. So it's a green solution for a function that's very commonly used in the industry, and that won us an award.
I'll come to food waste, and the reason I wanted to link the two of you is I got to know Hong Kong Rita some years ago because a Hong Kong company was looking for a recycled fabric so that they can make extremely smart windbreakers, because this was an extremely smart company. Yeah, they wanted their staff to be wearing extremely smart, well-made, recycled windbreaker. So I introduced them to Hong Kong Rita, and then I kind of had the pleasure of following the process. And when a deal was struck, I was actually sent to, as an example, sample of this windbreaker. Wow, it was beautiful. And I heard from the company that everybody wanted to volunteer to do the things that they wanted their staff to do just to get the windbreaker because it was so beautiful. It was made of recycled coffee beans. So perhaps anyway, I can come to you, Andrew. I mean, the food waste that you're dealing with, I mean, just tell us how you're really doing it. And you've been doing it for, I think, a little while now. And perhaps what are some of the problems and some of the, some of the wins that you've had? Share that with us, please.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess, we have people building, people making things for us. I mean, as a group, we serve the local community in Hong Kong. So maybe I can show some slides here to talk about our initiative that we have been carrying out. For example, we are in the Olympian City, which is one of the major shopping center on the on Kowloon side. We're the first shopping center mall in Hong Kong, and we install a highly efficient food decomposer that can decompose 99.8% waste. This is back in 2013, way before even I joined. But our group has taken the initiative. We installed something. In 2014, we installed another higher capacity in Olympian City. And again, that is an initiative because we took the initiative. We believe in supporting society, and that can handle capacity up to 500 kilograms per day. Now in Hong Kong, I guess we're very privileged. We're not short of food. And we go to a restaurant, we can get any. Hong Kong is so blessed that we can get any kind of food from all over the world, and we've got abundant supply. But we do waste a lot. And we see a lot of waste from our tenants, and they push it down. Now that causes subsequent issue to the waste treatment, etc. I mean, it's a value chain. So I guess without so when we're trying to deal with the problem, we're looking at, first of all, doing the food waste. So those are shopping malls that we pay for the facility instead of the tenant doing on their own. We built the centralized facility, and that waste is processed through. At least we're doing something for Hong Kong. Now, subsequent to that, we have also done things in residential properties. So we have our Sino Property Services has implemented a food waste management program. It's managed by various residential property that we have we manage, like Bowen's Lookout, the Island Resort Mall, Exchange Tower, Skyline, Coronation, even our headquarters TST Center. So again, we believe in not just doing it on the commercial sense, but helping our residential development property also dealing with that. So again, that's the third aspect. If I go to the next slide, please. The third aspect is in the hotels. So in 2019, Orca Digester is one of the top leading Canadian machine, and this one is capable of processing 16,000 kilograms, 16 tons of food waste per month. That's been installed at Gold Coast Hotel, and that transforming waste into food, into liquid. About 8 tons of food waste has been processed, which is equivalent here, we say 7.24 tons of greenhouse gas emission. So for us, it's not just doing for fun, but I think we are really contributing to this greenhouse emission. And basically, our contribution to our ESG target and goals, we are actually taking it bull by the horn and doing it. And we have even an internal food waste management task force team that's led by our restaurant chef, the stewards, the hygiene manager, everybody's involved, and review ways of reducing waste in our food production, food processing, and final disposal. Of course, we can't control the customer in how much they order and how much they don't eat, but at least this food waste program is certainly helping in that. We are constantly on the lookout. Now, you talk about collaboration, not just in Hong Kong. We constantly, in my team, we look at innovation solution from global. So, before COVID, I used to travel a little bit so we can look around. But right now, we can do things online, and we use Zoom and everything. But we've been looking globally in Israel, Canada, Australia, US, and mainland China, etc. We look for innovation programs that can help us in our process to achieve the target one. And food waste certainly is one area we've been constantly looking at. And then we've been looking at the getting rid of plastics. We've been looking at, can we use other materials as food container, etc. So we are not stopping in just one. But I think what I share about food waste, these are the actual tangible operational initiative that we are carrying out right now on our properties.
Right, well, perhaps we can segue on this to about collaboration, right? Because Andrew, you said that you can provide all of these services, but you really need people to collaborate with you. And I think, Thomas, you also talked about collaboration within your industry and between the public and the private sector, and I guess for the supply chain, right? I mean, by definition,
Definitely.
you need to work up and down the supply chain to be able to achieve much better results. So Thomas, maybe I can come back to you. What are some of the issues that you have on the ground to get people together to co-learn and to collaborate?
I think as now Christina, I said, I think saying is easy. Doing is, I think, far more difficult.
Yes.
I think you look around in construction or with the developers. So I think saleability is definitely the number one. How to sell their flats. But I don't think the zero emission is definitely really high on the agenda. You look at, I mean, all the developers in Hong Kong. I think we are doing them in the bare minimum. So let's say I think on the lead or beam sort of mark goal would be the sort of normal. But you're really seeing a very few platinum sort of project. Is it really that bold commitment that we need to sort of, I think, do?
Right. So
I mean,
Thomas, you're talking about these standards, right? Lead or beams. These are the construction design standards. And what you're saying is people are rather, well, they should be more ambitious, right? They should go for the
course.
higher standard.
Yeah, otherwise, how can you achieve, I think, the zero emission? You should target as a much lower sort of platform. But then you need to start now when you sort of design the building. Otherwise, it would be far, far too late.
Right. Well,
And-
you know, I think we have some people's question is, you know, this we didn't start today. This idea of the government actually giving GFA. This is extra floor area to
Correct.
developers who are willing voluntarily, this is not by a mandate, right? Voluntarily to go for these higher standards. We've been doing it for a long time now. Why do you think people haven't really completely taken this on board? Do we actually need a mandate?
Yeah, maybe I need to applaud, I think, the government now for the sort of private project. They're giving them 6% free GFA. You're able to do this MIC. But as I said, salability is the number one thing. You just build a building just like, I think, so subdivided flat. How can they sell? So this is, I think, that's why some flexibility need to be sort of changed. Instead of just MIC, they really need to do DFMA, design for manufacturing and assembly, not just a big sort of container, but elements by elements, just now what I've shown on the slide. So then that would be meeting really the ultimate or customers or requirement.
Right. Who can help us to bring this kind of conversation together on a continuous basis, right? Not maybe one-off meetings.
And I think the minister, I think we need to talk to each other and come up with a much more together with the industry. Then,
Yes, that's
yeah,
right.
I mean that coalition, I think, need to be done. Otherwise, I think I think doing it much of silo manner, we are not able to achieve, I think, the ultimate goal. Say, for example, EVs, I think so. Minister said, oh, 2035, I think we will have all sort of EV coming. But then the Development Bureau is still beginning to specify a very minimal number of EV for all the contracts because the Development Bureau is the largest developer in Hong Kong. Once they specify things would then start to grow. So this is the type of, I think, coalition that we need to do.
Right. Well, that sounds quite helpful because what I'm hearing you say is there is still some better alignment that we can make because we have the answers, we have the people, we have different departments in the government that can just smooth out the alignment.
Yeah.
And then you could have a much bigger impact.
And I think on the private sector viewpoint, I think the BEC, the Green Building Council, Hong Kong USD, again, need to sort of gather together rather than I think we do it, I think, separately. Because this coalition is so important. Andrew have really pointed out, in order to have an innovation to come by, I think we need to have this inclusive or diversity and inclusive sort of management, I think, approach. Otherwise, no innovation can be realized.
But maybe, Andrew, you can talk a little bit about that since you're in innovation. How can we align people so that we can show each other, we can innovate more and faster?
Yeah, I think Thomas touched a point because, you know, in Hong Kong, we're well governed and we're well structured. We have a lot of rules that are very easy to follow. But that is a detrimental effect against innovation because innovation is about breaking rules. It's about making changes. But sometimes it really needs to be a tripartite relationship with the government taking a lead, the industry responding and doing something, and we can bring in the innovators like the R&D centers and the university, HKUST alike. So can I just show the slide? In terms of food waste, maybe I show this example of to strengthen this part, I think accolade to the government. Back in 2012, the secretary has initiated this Food-Wise Hong Kong Steering Committee. So that is from government with the industry involved. And Mr. Darrell Ng, our deputy chairman, was the chairman of, and also chairman of our ESG steering committee within Sino, was one of the members of this Food-Wise Hong Kong Steering Committee. And it's through this initiative that he really pushed down. And I think a lot has been done by not just ourselves, probably various other groups, but I think the example I showed early on, we as a responsible developer have done something for our part. But we certainly could do more in line, but we need to align with the government policy and all that. So I think that really is and I think sufficient public awareness of this food waste problem needs to be in Hong Kong to install behavioral changes. Like, for example, in our hotel, we can't say to people, don't take so much, or we charge you more if you take too much and you throw. I mean, some people start doing that, but we're just trying to encourage consumer change of behavior. There's always food up at the buffet table for you to take, but can take less, and so you can waste less. And in a way, we need to change our behavior. But I think this tripartite relationship with the government initiative and the commercial players joining forces to change consumer behavior. But education is very, very important. But I also believe as we, there are most of the major developers all have innovation team, and also including Gavin's group. I think there's a lot of innovation team we are seeing surfacing, and people are looking for innovation solutions to solve the problem. So food waste is one problem as an example, but there are other problems like energy and getting rid of plastic, all those things. And I think we need to look beyond, not just within, but we need to look across, and we need to work with contractors, work with the consultant, work with university, R&D center to arrive at a problem for Hong Kong.
I do want to ask you a question about collaboration. Now, in my experience, everybody is really busy with your primary responsibility. And then to collaborate means you need to constantly bring people together, have dialogue, make records, and then go back to the people and bring people together again. It's actually quite an elaborate and time-consuming exercise. How do you think, in your experience, that we can really do this well? Because in my experience, everybody says, well, why don't you organize us? We'll all come because we have so many ideas. We have so much we want to say, but it's too heavy on us to be the coordinator. So what ideas do you have? How can we do this better?
Maybe I can start here and others can follow. So recently, Sino, in fact, we ourselves and Hong Kong Land has taken a joint initiative. We started a group purely commercial from the developer we call the PropTech Alliance of Hong Kong. And here we got 11 developers here, so Hong Kong Land, SWA, Lam Phong, Great Eagle, etc. New World. So 11 of us joined together. But you mentioned the point. Somebody needs to do some work to get. So what we've been doing is, so this year I'm chairing along with Hong Kong Land. So what we have been doing is sharing experience and innovation that we have found, and our experience in dealing with problems like during COVID, how do we deal with the sanitization issue? So we're doing that. But one of the sessions that we have really was very good is everybody were sharing their experience in reduction of energy, and was very good. Our team say, wow, I learned a lot from Hong Kong Land, and somebody I learned a lot from this, so and so. So I think industry probably also need to work together to share those experience without reservation, because we're all doing something good for the industry, for the society.
Right, so we can learn to compete and collaborate. On
in fact, developers don't really
things,
compete.
right?
I mean, apart from buying lands, but
Right.
but in contribution to ESG and to sustainability, we're in it together. I think we all need to have that mindset of working together. We all become better.
Right. Well, Ronnie, how about along the supply chain? I mean, how are you guys trying to come together?
Well, I think what we learned from the process is we need to help different parties see the potential, like what's in it for them, and how can they benefit as an individual company or as the industry as a whole. And it's not easy, and but I think we all have the same goal, and we all know sustainability is the way to go. So I think, especially in the recent year, I think the conversation is much easier because the industry, the customer is pushing for sustainability. So the brands and company, they got the pressure of actually doing something. So everybody is looking for solution, and it makes the conversation much easier. And I would say it makes the collaboration opportunity more accessible.
Well, there's also some questions about talent. I mean, do you see that we're going into this new world of net zero? Our young people, you want them to understand all this, and you want them to innovate. What's the talent pool like in your industry?
Maybe let me answer your previous question first, because it's very important. I think this collaboration, because 5 years ago you asked me, I said, no chance I think we can do this. But because of technology, now we have created this so-called common data environment. In construction, there are huge wastages from client to consultant, main contractor, subcontractor, and there's a whole supply chain. But with a common data environment, everyone is sharing the same common platform. Cutting down
Digital, right?
all those
This is the
wastages.
digital transformation.
Those are digital. And we seeing is believing. We went to see, I think, the Crossrail in the UK. We can definitely see the whole viaduct, the whole tunnel, well connected, really cutting down all those wastages. In the meantime, we are now from the single CDE to multi-sensor CDE, having a lot of sensors. That's not what I said. This, let's say the beam is manufactured in Shenzhen. We can then really monitor the whole thing from factory to Hong Kong, and also all the FM thereafter. So this is really important. But again, in terms of collaboration, again, we learn it from the other jurisdiction. Let's say, in the meantime, MTRC do not talk to AA do not talk to highway. But then you have common platform for everybody. You got it. This is where collaboration is all about. And now it's beginning to happen. But then you say, oh, who is the leader? So that's why you need some good task force to bring all of them together. And you can have huge sort of saving.
I mean, in your sector, as you say, you can have huge savings. And
No, not yet.
not yet, I know, but we want the huge saving. So where do you think in your sector you would want to kind of, let's just start here. So in the next 5 years, right, you can build all of this.
This DFMA, digital management, and also when you touch on the very good point. With these new things coming up, we create new discipline. That's why we need to upskill our people. With all this CDE coming, who's going to manage it? So now each discipline will have the information engineer, information manager, and we need to cultivate those people. Otherwise, who's going to manage your data? This is really
so
the key thing.
what can universities do?
Oh, you can do a lot of things. Train them up, upskill them. But before you can upskill them, you need to know the particular discipline. So it's not just saying, oh, this is really interesting. So people now, oh, you do this BIM, building information modeling.
Yeah.
But now when we do a BIM model, you need an engineer sitting side by side with the BIM modeler, because they lack the real buildability. Same applies to the car industry and whatnot. So the training need to be combined. They need to have the technology as well as buildability. That is really the key. Then definitely, tertiary institutions have a big part to play.
But this is kind of what we're struggling with also at university. So we mentioned green finance in panel 1, and there we are having financial institutions saying to us that they want to hire all our people who've had some training in sustainability. But actually, what we're really saying to each other is the educational experience has to have much more integrated
Mhm.
learning
Mhm.
about all kinds of sustainability knowledge, and
Mhm.
then also specialties, right? So that they can do the sort of thing that you are talking about.
Can't agree more. I think now every sector, you just can't good in your own discipline. You need to be appreciating other people's, I think, discipline and how you this integrating capabilities are now key importance.
Okay, well, our professors are listening, so that's very good.
He agree with me 100%.
Yes, Professor Fong. Any contribution on the kind of people you need to hire and train?
Well, I think, since the fashion industry, that the supply chain is so long, and we touch on so many different kind of sector, like logistic and packaging, like on materials. And we actually need talents from all sectors, basically. And I really agree on what Thomas was saying, like we cannot work silo. Like we have to start talking to different industry, and frankly, textile industry in terms of technology, it's a little backward. It's an industry that it's relatively slow on innovation, and there's a lot we can learn from other industry and how we can borrow the experience to our industry.
Can't agree more. I think in terms of university teaching, so I'm involved at HKUST as well in the School of Engineering. That we are finding the people we need, because we hire traditional engineers that builds, but for future property technology people, we need people beyond those scope. We need people who are conversant with data analytics, seeing trends. So for example, Thomas mentioned the entertainer, the energy container on construction site. We've been using it on our project since last year. But what we see for that instance is the data of how those cranes are used on a daily basis. Is it against schedule? That dictates whether it's behind, because in BIM, you should be hoisting something. And why is it half an hour late or 30 minutes late or 2 hours late, which means you're behind schedule? Now, data scientists need to pick those up and say, hey, you're behind schedule. Now, we need people, talent that can cut across. So I think university, when training young graduates, they need to train people just beyond the vertical, cutting across application. In the future, we see a lot more application using existing technology in different fields. That's what's going to make the world much, much more exciting. Recently, we ran a career show just a couple of weeks ago, and sustainability and innovation were high on the applicants' agenda list. We ran this show at this convention center, and we found that most people visited those two booths because all the young people are interested in sustainability, innovation, and
Right.
Christine, can I follow up with
Please,
his
please,
sort of
please.
story to
Yes.
complete the whole story? I was very pleased that you talked about entertainer. In one of our projects, we work for Science Park. We use, instead of using 4 diesel generator, we eliminated, and then 2 entertainer, power up 4 tower cranes, using the AI in the entertainer, and then we can optimize the tower crane operation.
Yeah.
But then those are data need to be transmitted. As I said, technology is the front line. The tower crane operator need to receive this. That is the key. That's what I said. In the technology, it's not good enough. You need to converge to the front line before you can get the benefit. This is exactly, I think, the crux of the matter. Thank you for raising this.
I think our students really want to know that all these things, I think, are exciting to them, but are they going to be reasonably well-paid jobs? Because one of the constant complaints in Hong Kong is young people all think they must go into financial services if they're going to have a decent living. But actually, these
I
jobs
think
that
the
you're
answer
talking
is
about,
yes.
good,
Yes.
good.
No doubt. For a humble contractor, we can recruit data scientists from Hong Kong UST. Previously, no chance whatsoever. If they don't get well paid, I will go to the e-commerce. Why come to a humble contractor? So definitely.
I do think this needs to be properly explained, though,
Yeah.
because I think as we go into the net zero world, as we go into the digital world, pretty much everything that we're going to do will require much higher skill. But our young people, or many people, still kind of think if you're going into construction, right? that means you're going to be a contractor, you're going to be blood, sweat, and tears pounding, something away on a dirty work site.
Yeah.
Whereas, this is actually not the case.
Now, I think if a fresh graduate from university come to Gammon, so there are two things they need to do. First thing, they need to make their hands dirty, is to do the setting out, the down to basic. That definitely to do. But the second thing they need to do is to do BIM. If they can't do BIM, they are not qualified to move up to the sort of rank. This is simple as this. Down to basic, and then the digital sort of knowledge. This is really have to be done.
Because I think the future of the world, I mean, COVID really bring to home the concept that someday you may not be able to go to work. But I think the future environment, as everything is digitized, a lot of controls can be done remotely. So the engineer may not be sweating out and in a 40 degrees Celsius humid weather, maybe sitting in a reasonably clean room on a computer. It's a bit like war games. They can control things and make things happen. I think for young people, they have to see the future. That's when digitization in processes cut across in property sector, FM sector, in construction, I mean, in manufacturing sector, we can see that cutting across. The future of employment is quite different to the past. Because we all think my days, I'm a trained engineer. I mean, my days of going to construction site wearing heavy boots and all kinds of things, it's very much different nowadays. So I think they need to change and realize what the vast opportunity.
Can I reinforce his message again? Now with the 5G or super Wi-Fi, now I think our project in charge would be, I think, just like a pilot. We have the 5G control center in our quarantine center project. They can look at all this screen and then we'll connect with the factory, so that we can get the ultimate safety and quality being achieved. And also we can monitor using this DFMA from factory to site. All have been managed under the 5G control panel. And again, with now the iCave, you can then really see all the detail virtually and combined with the digital twin and the reality. So all is now, I think, very much sort of data sort of
Well, can I ask another question? I mean, obviously, at universities, we're looking at giving degrees in engineering and so on. But we also have a lot of young people who can be technically trained in our vocational school.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so I also want you to perhaps share with us a little bit about hiring of those people, because you're not just hiring engineers, right? You need to hire all kinds of people, all presumably up and down that chain of technical command. So what future is there for people who perhaps do not come to a university but are technically trained?
And I think now for the VTC graduate, when they sort of, come back for their last year, they would have at least 3 to 4, I think, offer already. They are in high demand. For us, we like to employ a lot more VTC graduate rather than university, honestly. They will be much more pragmatic. They really know the sort of really hands-on experience, really aspire to have the digital. And that's right. Those are really the people that we're looking for. Is it really?
Okay. on more the art side, I mean, I know fashion, right? I mean, very often I think of, science stream and art stream. But actually, you also need people who are good at communication, in design, and visualization, and so on. So there's a huge future in the net zero world, also for people who are perhaps not so technically minded.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, I actually come from a creative background. I was a fashion designer, now working in a research institute. So every day I'm learning new things. And also because I come from a different background from research, I sort of see like what the loopholes are, like what are we missing? And I've been working in the industry on manufacturing and retail, and that sort of give me the advantage of spotting what's the potential in research and what we can develop that's useful for the industry. So I think it's very different. Like, even though we are a research institute, it doesn't mean that everyone has to be the scientist. We need different sort of people to spot the potential and do different things.
And I can't agree more. Because within, I think, all this sort of innovation, you don't need all of them are innovators.
Yeah.
You have some sort of silence or heroes. There are a lot of those. Otherwise, you really not. There's so many leaders. You're never able to come up with the collaboration, and that is really. That's why the embracement of the D&I is definitely the way to go for all organizations.
Right. I mean, just in the last hour where we've talked about, the work that you do, I get the sense that you are all looking to hire people. You see a very bright future. You're interested to hire both technically and non-technically minded people, but you have certain requirements of them that they're able to work across these different disciplines. So your picture is very bright, but maybe you can also share a little with us about how you see perhaps the net zero drive. Is this a key driver? Is something else also a key driver? We talked about the digital world, right? Clearly, this is a key driver. So how can we use the last 10 minutes or so to kind of stitch all this together and perhaps develop a new narrative for Hong Kong?
It's too big a question for us. But what I can say is, I think we cannot do it alone. Let's collaborate with the Greater Bay Area. This is our future. Don't just look at Hong Kong. I think you have to be.
What do you think? How can we enhance that?
As I said, I think the fabrication hub, I think, like it or not, will be in the Greater Bay Area. We need to go there, interface with them, see how we can sort of have the synergy between, I think, the Greater Bay Area. I think this is really the thing to do.
It's very positive to actually have a large hinterland.
Yes.
Yes. And likewise, I mean, for us, when we look for talents, we see a lot of opportunity. In fact, recently we have a case of embracing some design students from PolyU and from the Hong Kong DI to help us look at sustainability. And the eyes from the designer seeing sustainable solution, they're able to apply materials, recycle material in different things. I probably mentioned that we're currently developing a recycled material bricks to embrace waste plastic into it. The interesting thing is we also put in some masks because we found NGO who were dealing with masks, strapping it, but don't know what to do with it. So we said, can we embrace it into the building bricks? And we're also experimenting with polystyrene box. So again, from a property sector, we are seeing, can we do things differently? And this is where I think the employee that we're looking for are people open-minded, are willing to embrace new concept, are willing to learn. We can learn many things, many days, all days. There's so much innovation out in the field nowadays. If you keep your eyes open for graduate, don't look just vertical into your own vertical dimension, but you look beyond, you see many exciting things. I mean, there's not enough hours in the day to read all these exciting new things.
So
Yeah.
you're saying that for a property company, you're using plastic bottles and face masks to now develop this recycled brick, right?
Yeah.
What do you do with this, or is this just an invention that
No,
you
it's
have
well,
financed?
we're following the normal commercial process, getting it tested to the strength required, and then we'll make a bit of noise about actually using it. But the concept, but what we're getting excitement from the community, in fact, among some of the developers that we talk to, you say, wow, this fit in our ESG initiative, our carbon emission. But just imagine if we're not getting gravels to be mined in somewhere, carbon footing in shipping to Hong Kong, and then they mix it into concrete. But we're just using local plastic waste in there. We're saving a lot of carbon footing.
Can you use those bricks, do you think?
Absolutely. We have had discussion already. We're
discussion.
definitely, I think, willing to try. I think maybe for the integration of, I think, the 9+2, everyone knows that, I think, the Silicon Valley of this Greater Bay Area is not in Hong Kong, it's in Shenzhen. And that's why now it's so pleased that it was written in the 14th five-year plan that Hong Kong would become the regional innovation hub. That's why the synergy is definitely there.
Well, actually, I think at Hong Kong Rita, you've invented some fabric that can suck in CO2.
Oh, yes.
So-
Yeah, it's one of the new experiment that we are doing. We are developing a CO2 absorbing textile. So it's still in development. It's still in very early stage. Now we can take in the CO2. So we are finding practical ways to release the CO2 without, releasing it back to the atmosphere. But it definitely attracts a lot of attention. And I have to echo to Andrew's point on bringing creativity in the industry. I think before I work in research, I think creative. It's I work in fashion, so it's about like fancy clothes and beautiful drawings and clothes. But I think creativity it's much more and much wider than what we can imagine. One example is we talk about the cellulosic powder that we got from the recycle separation technology. And our team actually find a lot of creative ways using those powder. One of the application is turning the powder into this super absorbent polymer that can be used in agricultural use. So it's actually a very common practice in agriculture to use those, what we call the SAP, super absorbent polymer, to retain the water and nutrient in the soil. But the conventional SAP is made of acrylic, so it's not biodegradable. So by making use of the cellulosic powder to make it into the SAP is actually biodegradable, and it actually helped the agricultural industry. So that's something that we didn't expect that we do from the big when we first developed the project. But that's creativity. So yeah.
Right. Well, it seems like all three of you can collaborate on something,
Yes.
right? And I was talking to one of your colleagues, Ronnie, about this new carbon absorbing material, and I don't know whether this was a little bit of a boast, and they were talking about, well, this material can suck in a lot of CLP's CO2. But
Yes.
in any case, I think this sort of discussion is not the sort of discussion that the general public hears, the kind of innovation that is actually taking place in Hong Kong. So just to round off our time today, perhaps each one of you can give us some encouragement, give our audience a little final piece of encouragement about net zero and how think you're going to win.
I think it can be achieved.
Very good. Okay.
No, I think it seems like a very, very far-fetched goal, but I think, like every step counts. So never underestimate your own effort.
There's no alternative. We have to do it together.
Well, thank you very much for joining panel 2. So you've heard that we have 3 panelists very active in Hong Kong's industry and commerce, and they all feel that it is possible to achieve net zero, work hard. We need to collaborate together. We haven't quite always done this as well as we could. Somehow we need to break our habits of working too much in silos. Technology is also raging ahead with new ideas, new products, new methods, and the digital revolution is already here. It makes tremendous demands on us, but young people, they start off with the digital world, and these are things that they can do across the board. So thank you very much for joining us, and maybe I can round today off. And thank you too for spending time with us today.